Okay, welcome to part 4 of the Military AI Works FSDS tutorial series. Still dealing with the basics tonight. And in part 4 we're going to look at cross-section mode, which is kind of right up here with this little, I guess it's an octagon shaped icon. It's right next to animation mode. And if you notice, without doing anything to the program, you can see that right now both cross-section mode and animation mode are both grayed out, and that's because they have very specific uses and there are only certain circumstances under which you can use them. For cross-section mode, what we're going to look at tonight, there's only one pre-made part that you can choose to use this with. And one thing about cross-section mode is you can't start working on a part that I know of and, for example, get halfway into making it into the shape you want and then switch to cross-section mode. To the best of my knowledge, you have to start with a clean tube that has at least one section with it and two cross sections, and work with that from there. And then once you do certain things to those cross sections, once you delete some of the points, or once you join some of the points via snap to scale or whatever, that keeps you from using cross-section mode from that point on. So you have to be careful with cross-section mode because you can only use it under a very specific set of circumstances, and I think you'll find that it only has one or two uses. It's real good at what it does, and mainly I'm talking about shaping fuselages or shaping round parts like a gun barrel or a barrel of a cannon, or a missile or something like that, a missile body or something like that, or even a submarine, for that matter. So we're looking at essentially at round objects, round tube objects that we want to shape, and we want to do them in cross sections. So we'll go ahead and look at this real quick tonight. I've got chocolate chip cookies in the oven that'll be done here in 15 minutes or so. So we're going to try to keep this one as short as I possibly can tonight, so I don't burn my chocolate chip cookies and I don't bore you guys with the details of cross section mode here. So to get into cross section mode, everybody go ahead and bring up a tube of your choice. I have a radius of 2, and I'm in feet tonight, a length of 20. That'll work. 16 points per section, 8 sections. With 8 sections, that'll give me 8 individual sections. That'll give me 9 total cross sections. I'll go ahead and leave both ends open by unchecking these boxes. I'll go ahead and make it smooth by checking the smooth box. And I will lay the structure along the x-axis from left to right, and we'll hit OK. Okay, and that brings up our first tube here. Center this guy up so you can see him here. Now that I've got the smoothing turned on, it's nice and smooth. So we have a nice cylinder here. And now that I brought up a tube, notice both animate in this case and the cross-section mode are both selectable now. Now we're not going to use animate tonight. We'll look at that some other time. But go ahead and select cross-section mode now that it's available, and you'll see when I use my arrow keys to scroll around here, or my P key or my N key for previous or next, or even these little entity select keys as they're called, I can scroll through the different cross sections. And remember, we said we had 8 sections on this part, so let me expand this here so you can see kind of what we're talking about with our tube. This is 1 section, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, this is 5, this is 6, this is 7, and this is 8. And then each cross section in this mode, when we have cross section mode active, each cross section comes up and we can count the cross sections. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we set the tube initially to have 8 sections, which made it, or gave it 9 total cross sections. So you're always going to have one more cross section than actual total sections, which makes sense because you have to close your tube out. So just some of the basic things you can do with cross-section mode that you can't do in any other mode. I can actually go in here, and just for the purposes of this demonstration, I can go in here and I can actually go through and, let's say, go over here the second from the left, and I can actually delete this cross-section and the one next to it, next to it, next to it, next to it. I can delete all but the 2 in cross-sections, and I don't lose any of the structure of my tube. Let me get out of this view so you can see that I'm not losing any of the tube structure. Okay, the whole thing still stays intact, and what I've done is simply just gotten rid of all those extra cross sections that were in there for whatever reason. Maybe I need to do that, or make the model or the part more simple or whatever, but that's something I can do in cross section mode. Now if I do that, let me undo that here, and let me show you the difference between trying to do it in cross section mode and trying to do it in point mode. If I come in here to point mode, okay, I can select all the points at once. So if I select point mode, Notice it brings up all the points at once. I can use my select tool and I can highlight an entire cross section's worth of points or vertexes, even though we're not in cross section mode. And then if I hit delete, it'll ask me, do I want to proceed, because it'll remove structure information. I hit yes, and notice the difference. When I delete points, or I delete a whole cross section's worth of vertexes or points, notice that it deletes structure information or part of your structure. Now you may want to do that. There are reasons for that, but generally, if you're working with a tube or you're trying to shape a fuselage, you obviously don't want to lose part of the feature, because once you've deleted it, it's a lot harder to put it back in there, to draw it back in there. So let's undo that. Okay, so that's a real good use for cross-section mode when you want to get rid of extra cross-sections. So let me get back into cross-section mode. Okay. The other thing I can do is if I go through here and delete all these, and let's say I screwed up and I'm like, shoot, I didn't mean to delete all those extra cross-sections, I can actually go back in here to the cross-section menu, and I can hit, it's got a remove cross-section mode or delete. I can hit insert cross-section. Okay, and it will insert a cross-section equidistantly in between these, the one that it was on and one of the ones next to it. I don't exactly know how it decides which to do, but it doesn't matter because you can always move the cross sections around. So I can insert cross sections. Okay, you can't do that in point mode. You can't insert a new area of points or vertexes unless you make it another polygon, bring that polygon into that part, join those two parts into one, and then go from there. But that's a lot harder to do. So this is real nice where you can insert cross sections. So when I'm making a fuselage, if I think I need 10 cross sections, I might go ahead and put in 15 or whatever in my tube selection box, and that way when I have extras that are left over at the end, I can just delete them, and then I don't lose anything or I don't have any penalties. Now, if I go to the very end cross section over here on the left, okay, and I go cross section and remove, okay, when I do that, I will lose structure information. See that? Let me undo that. All I did here was go over to the far left and I removed it, okay, or deleted it, and I lose it. And that's because it's the end piece or the end cross section. Therefore, you've left nothing in the middle. Okay, but then if I'm on this cross section and I switch to the middle one and delete, notice the same thing. I don't lose anything. Okay, so I just end up with these two last ones. Okay, now I want to add some cross sections back in here to work with this a little bit more. Oops, I didn't want to make a polygon. I did, but I didn't want to. Insert cross section. Let me go back over here to this side, insert cross section, and then I can essentially build my tube back up. I can go part, center axis to part. I can go F5 to part mode. I can get this center back up by removing that x-axis location, making it 0, and we're right back to where we started with a semi-open-ended tube. It's got a polygon in there, but no big deal. We can delete that if we really wanted to by going to polygon mode, finding that polygon, around and around in circles till we find it. Maybe. Can we find it? Is it in there? There it is. I'll delete that. Okay, now my tube's open again. No big deal. Okay, but I'm still in cross-section mode. Okay. So we've looked at how to add cross sections. We've looked at how to delete cross sections. What else is left in that? Make polygon. Okay, that's just what I did here. You can actually, just like you could, like the last lesson where we showed you how to add polygons back in or make polygons from certain points. If you need to close off the ends for whatever reason, or one of the interior polygon or one of the interior cross sections, you can do that. Just go ahead and select the cross section that you want. Go up to the cross section menu and hit Make Polygon. Okay, and it should put an end on it. And notice in this case it put the polygon facing the wrong way. And we know from our last lesson with working in polygon mode that all I need to do is get to that polygon out here on the end, and notice it's facing the wrong way, and just hit F for flip, and I flip that polygon, and then we have our end piece. Okay, so I can go back to cross section mode, go to the other cross section, hit Make Polygon, and there we filled our ends in. So you can do that as well with cross section mode. You can do that with point mode as well, and most of the time it'll work. It's a little bit easier to do it in cross section mode. It's just one of those things you have to decide. We're not going to worry about copy to template and conform to template tonight. Those are two things that kind of more advanced that you may or may not use, and not much use in talking about those tonight. What we will look at is the move function, the rotate function, and the scale function. These are the three functions you're going to use the most. Rotate not so much, but move and scale for sure. And the last thing we're going to do tonight is we're going to make a jet engine just to show you fairly quickly how you can make something like a jet engine part out of just a tube or a couple tubes and using essentially just using cross-section mode. So just like move, rotate, and scale function or scale mode when you're working with a regular part in part mode, if you're working in cross-section mode, you can constrain the movement of any one of these, move, rotate, or scale. You can constrain the movement to any one of the axes that you want by canceling out the other two or all three for that matter if you don't want it to move. But we'll start with the move mode, and you can see I can take the whole cross-section and I can move it around. It's no big deal to move it around. And any window I go in, I can move it in all the axes, and you can get a really funky looking part out here when you do that. Okay, so we'll undo all that real quick, get back to where we started. So that's move. You can do rotate, and again, it's going to rotate about the axis you see here in the center, in this case the Y. Okay, so we can rotate it, and notice you see the changes down here in the other two windows. I can come in here and twist it. It starts to look all twisted and weird and different. So not a lot of use for that, but there may be times when you want to twist a cross-section around like that. Okay, and then the most useful feature you'll find in cross-section mode is the scale feature. And that's kind of neat because you can go in here and let's say you want to go in the middle, and if I don't constrain X, Y, or Z, it's going to scale the whole cross-section uniformly, or it's going to shrink it uniformly so that it shrinks down in this case to whatever you want to call that. Okay. So that's a real neat use for the scale function. And the same thing, you can scale it outwards and make it thicker. Okay. And then the cool thing is you can move to your different, if you're in cross-section mode here, you can move to your different cross-sections and scale them independently of each other. Okay. So you can make some very interesting shapes fairly quickly by doing this. And you've made a wine glass or something to that effect. So the scale is probably the most powerful feature you can do with cross-section mode, and it's the one you're going to use most, especially if you're trying to make a fuselage shape with an airplane. Okay, and again, I can constrain that depending on what I need to do. If I need to make it so that it's only skinnier on one axis, I can do that. So in this case, let me constrain X and Y, and then working in this window, I can squeeze it so that it squeezes down just in one direction there, and I could do the same to the other ones. Squeeze it down in just one direction there, and you can get your part all out of whack pretty quickly, or you can get it shaped to a particular shape that you need to get it shaped to, just depending on what you need there. So that's another neat little feature of the scale mode, is being able to constrain it to one or two axes or all three axes if you want to. All right, so that's just the move, the rotate, and the scale function. We've talked about how you add cross sections, how you remove cross sections or delete cross sections. Let me give you an example of how you end up screwing yourself up and getting to the point where you can't use cross-section mode anymore. So I'll bring my tube back up, and we talked about before when we were working with point mode how you can use snap to scale to let me delete all these to join. Actually, let me do that. Let me undo one here. Let me leave the middle guy, and I'll just leave one, and I'll just move him over here to the middle. There we go. So he's where I want him. We talked about if you join or you use snap to scale, how it'll take, for example, 16 different vertexes in a round structure like this, and it'll snap them into just one point instead of 16. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the two end cross sections. I'm going to scale them unrestricted. I'm going to scale them down to a point, each one. And I get just whatever you want to call this looking structure here. Okay, and because I've scaled them essentially to infinity, I don't need 16 individual points on each end. Would you guys agree with that? I just need one point, because at that time, those 16 vertexes are essentially acting like one point or one vertex. So what I can do is, notice up here I'm in cross-section mode. I still can I can still switch to the three cross sections, even though the two on the end are essentially scaled down to nothing. Okay, I'm still in cross-section mode. If I go up here to part and I choose snap to scale, okay, watch what happens over here in cross-section mode when I do that. I hit snap to scale. It'll ask me merging points. Yes, I want to proceed. It'll tell me I eliminated 30 points. Okay, that was 15 points from each of those two cross sections, because each cross section had 16 vertexes or points. I eliminated 15 from each, leaving just one, so that's 30 total. And now I'm in cross-section mode, but it's been grayed out, or essentially it's no longer highlighted. and you notice my cross section that I was on in the middle has disappeared. So by snapping the scale to just the one cross, or to snapping the scale of those two in cross sections and making them into just one part, I no longer have the ability to work in cross section mode. So you can do that to yourself unknowingly, or another way to do that is to do that in point mode. So point mode is another way. If you're working in point mode, that's another way that you can unintentionally get yourself kind of banished or banned from cross-section mode. So let me undo this. And again, undo key is your friend here, because you can always, if you get it before you have an autosave, and don't forget, if you have your autosave every 5 minutes or whatever, if you don't undo it, you may not be able to recover it. But let me go back and undo what I just did, and let me see here if it comes back. There we go. Okay, back to our three cross sections. We're in cross section mode, and let me just scale this back here to the way I had it before. So the end pieces are tiny, and instead of going snap to scale, I'm just going to leave it like it is, and I'm going to go to point mode. Okay, and I'll go to point mode, and let's say I delete one of these whole sections of points. It'll ask me yes. And if I do that, and if I try to get back into cross-section mode, notice I can't select it anymore. Okay, so I've undone that, and they're no longer, there's still two cross-sections, but I've essentially undone one, or I've deleted one, and I've scaled the other one down till it's so small that it's not usable anymore as a practical cross-section. So that's another way to get yourself accidentally out of cross-section mode. Okay. Let's see, back in cross-section mode here again, and then the other way I know of to do that is select point mode again, and go in here and just delete like the top half of your points, or the one side of your points. Again, and say yes. Okay, it'll leave you with kind of a half structure over here, almost like a canoe or a kayak shape. Okay, but by doing that, again, notice the cross-section mode has gone gray again or whatever. And if I try to go up here in the mode and select cross-section, it won't allow me to select that. Okay, so there are a couple different ways that if you're working with cross-sections and you accidentally do something, you lose the ability to keep working in cross-section mode. So when you are making a fuselage, or a part or whatever that you're going to make, just make sure that you make all the changes to it before you get out of cross-section mode. Okay, and just real quickly to show you how you would shape a fuselage, just start on one end here, use your scale feature, just scale that all the way down to make the point, go to the next one, scale that down a little bit, the next one a little bit more, and then just so on and so forth. And that's how basically you would shape a fuselage till you get something that looks like an airplane fuselage from overhead. Okay, and just like you can do with the move mode or the rotate mode, you can constrain these scale functions into one way or the other. So let's say, looking at this top-down view, if I just wanted to make the model or the fuselage right now, I wanted to make it skinnier and not let it scale in the y direction, so I can constrain y and I can constrain x, and come back here to starting with the second one, and I can start squeezing it together. Okay, little bit by little bit, and I'm still holding some of the roundness in the vertical plane, but I'm kind of getting rid of some of the roundness in the horizontal plane. And you can see over here in my preview window that I've kind of squeezed it so it's a little skinnier now. It doesn't look like a nice round like airship or a balloon would or whatever. It's a little bit squeezed on the end like some airplane fuselages are. So that's a neat kind of a way to create different shapes or fuselage shapes or whatever by doing that. So that's a neat little feature of cross-section mode. Now, to finish this up tonight, again, we said we'd keep this tutorial short. I've pretty much showed you everything you can do with cross-section mode. Again, it's fairly limited. You can make fuselage shapes with it. You can make other round shapes like engine nacelles and engines, or like a turbofan engine with it. And that's what we're going to do next. We're just going to go to a tube part here, and we'll do 16 points. We'll make its radius, let's say realistically, we'll say it's a huge jet engine. We'll make it a 5-foot radius, so it'll give it a 10-foot diameter. And a length of 20 is fine for now. We'll make it along the x-axis. We'll leave the ends open for now. We'll leave it smooth. We'll do 6 sections. And hit OK. Okay, that brings up our little tube here. We'll center this guy up so we can see this take shape. Whoops. Center. There we go. Shift I. Remember, Shift I will let you zoom in the preview window without zooming in the other windows. And I don't know if we talked about this, but if you click just your left mouse button and move your mouse around, that'll kind of rotate it. If you hold both your mouse buttons down at the same time, you can add additional degrees of rotation to your view here to get your part the way you want it or where you want to orient it to watch it. So to make a jet engine, I can do it using point mode, but it takes a little bit more work. So this is a perfect example where I would come into cross section mode, and I would start by making the front of the jet engine. And let's see, I would just go ahead and scale this down. So we'll just pretty much do this by scaling everything down. I'll scale it down to a certain size. Okay, I'll go to the next cross section. I'll scale that guy a little bit down as well. I'll go back to the front. I'll use the move function, and I'm going to move him on the inside. And actually, you know what? Let me do this. Let me save that. Let me go to this. Let's see, this guy. Have to think about it a little bit. Move. Do we want to do it like that? I kind of want to do it like that, but I want to leave one more cross section. So let's go here. We'll make this the front, and we'll make this guy. Let's see. We'll move him. There we go. We'll move him inside, and go back to this guy, the front one. Now we'll scale him down a little bit more, and then we'll move him only in the x-axis. We'll move him inside. Okay, and you can see from the front here, we've kind of created the intake nacelle or whatever. Okay, just from a real basic shape. And then I can take the last two cross sections, and I can kind of start to scale those down. Whoops, not move, but scale those down a little bit. Try to give my jet engine some shape to it. Go to the very last one, scale him down a little bit more, and then I can move him just back in like that, kind of join him up like that. And there you can kind of see without doing too much here that we've kind of made the nacelle section of a jet engine. Now if I want to shape that a little bit more, I can go here to scale. I can shape it out so it expands out a little bit so it looks a little bit more realistic. Okay, so we've kind of made our jet engine in there. Remember, if we want to add a polygon, so let's say we want to add like a turbine disc in here so that it looks like a jet engine, I can go to any one of these cross sections, and I can go up here to a cross section, make polygon. Okay, and then we've essentially inserted our what we would texture as like a turbine disc. Okay, if you wanted to add the little spinner on there, you could do that as well. And then so we've kind of got the basic shape going here, and I might come through here a little bit, and I might, again, I might scale this down a little bit more to look a little bit more realistic. When I do that, don't forget to fix all of your cross sections here. So that's gotten to be a little too skinny, to be honest. Now it looks more like a bucket than it does a jet engine. So you can play with this a little bit. You can always go back and fix it, and do what you need to do to make it look more realistic. Maybe like that. Just something like that. And then if you want, you can come in here. You can do another tube real quick, and you probably just need two sections. And same. Okay. And then just take this last final section, scale him down to infinity. That's fine. And actually, I didn't even need two sections. I just needed one section with two cross sections. I can come over here to this left one, do delete. Okay, that leaves me with kind of that, the hot exhaust spike or whatever. I can scale that down a little bit and then just move it. Actually, in this case, just move the whole part in the x-axis back here. Okay, and now you've kind of got your cone-looking kind of thing, the hot exhaust cone that comes out from the back there for the hot section. So you've essentially got your little jet engine, and we've done that just by using essentially the cross-section mode and scaling a couple parts. I can go in here, and I think I can do, let's see, F2. Yeah, I can. Well, he's already on smooth. Okay. So let me go to the other part. No, it was the part. All right, so we've essentially created, essentially a jet engine from just two tubes and using some of the features that come along with cross-section mode. So you guys can play with that a little bit. I encourage you to try stuff out with cross-section mode. Try to get yourself in trouble with it. Try to see what you can and can't get away with. And I think with a little experience, you guys will see that for nice round objects like a jet engine or an aircraft fuselage, or even like a submarine or something like that, or a gun casing or a cannon or missile body, something like that. Cross-section mode is a very easy way to make those parts. But beyond that, it doesn't have a whole lot of uses. So, if we ever get around to making an actual AI model, we might start off by shaping a fuselage with that. But once you get the basic shape, then you need to do some more specialized shaping, and that usually means at that time going into cross-section mode. And I'll give you a perfect example of how, or excuse me, point mode. I'll give you a perfect example of how I would use point mode to do something differently than I would with cross-section mode. With point mode, I can select just some of the points to scale or whatever. In this case, if you guys have ever seen like a Boeing 737-300, it has the bottom of the engine nacelle kind of flattened off for height clearance reasons. So what I could do is I could just scale it in the Y here and kind of do that. I could flatten it off, okay, and then I get that kind of that flat look to it. Obviously, I'd have to go back and fix the kind of the hot section there, but you see what I mean as I was able to flatten that bottom piece off. Okay, so that's an example. And as soon as I do that, if I try to, well, I guess I can still work in cross-section mode because I haven't really deleted the cross sections too much. But again, you'll find yourself going back between point mode and cross-section mode, just doing what you need to do to get your parts shaped correctly. So again, that's cross-section mode in a nutshell. Again, not a whole lot of uses with it. Just be careful when you're using it that you don't do something that makes the part no longer available to be worked on in cross-section mode. And just have fun with it. See what you can do with it. Twist the cross sections around a little bit and make all kinds of fun shapes. And then we'll finish with the last tutorial here in the next couple days, which will look at everything else we haven't really touched upon yet. And then after that, we'll get to work on building some scenery. So if you guys have any questions, come see us in the forums. And until next time, take it easy, give that stuff a shot, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.